Hey folks, it's Nate. Thanks for joining me at the art table again today. I've mentioned before that Arthur Phoenixborne is the founder of Avalon, the nation from which Columbia descends, and that he casts a long shadow across Columbia in spite of the near millennia that separates them. In my last lore video, I told how Arthur gained the favor of the mated pair, but this is only one part of his immense legacy. In addition to founding the nation and its clergy, Arthur also formalized its premier magical order and defeated Europe's greatest foe. In order to fully understand Arthur, one must first understand the Forever Wars. The history of Europe comes in three eras: before eternity, the reign of the seventh, and after eternity. For our purposes, the years before eternity aren't important. The story truly starts when the seventh son of eternity marched over the horizon into Europe and laid it to waste. For over a century, the armies of eternity conquered and consolidated, spreading their influence across the continent little by little. Now, no one is sure if the man known as the Seventh Son was the same person during the entire reign. Few people from outside his armies saw his face even once. If any saw him twice, their stories are long lost to history. Regardless of whether he was a man, an immortal, or just an office shared between many individuals, the Seventh Son of Eternity came very close to conquering all of Europe. His armies were approaching the westernmost limits of Iberia and pushing north through Gaul when they destroyed a small fortified town named Worms. Now, no one survived the devastation save a boy named Arthur, who ran northwards to a large city still free from Eternity's influence. The city was called Linz, and there he met a potter named Uther and his wife Meryl, who took him in. Now, Uther was a natural-born hero, a champion imbued with the strength of the earth who could not be slain in physical combat unless his will broke. His wife was a stone singer. She could hear the song of the earth and join in with it, creating incredible magical effects, but more importantly, able to anticipate events before they happened. As the armies of eternity grew closer to Linz, Uther taught Arthur the way of the warrior. For nearly a decade, Uther and his adopted son fought against the armies of eternity. With Meryl's predictive abilities, they were able to not only stymie them, but begin to make headway in reconquering territory they had captured. However, eventually they proved so effective that Arthur and Uther drew the attention of the Seventh Son himself. Their first catastrophic meeting resulted in the death of Uther of Linz. Arthur took up his father's spear and swore vengeance. Now, in time, he would make his way back to the ruins of Worms, and he would retake the city and establish it as his own. It was about this time that Meryl heard the call of the Lady in Burning Stone, and the two of them left, eventually carving the Everest Channel between Avalon and the rest of Europe. But I've already discussed that in some length, so we'll move on. After that, Arthur was alone. So, he dug in and began to fortify the walls of Avalon. Outside of Avalon, he set up the first stone circle, Stonehenge, and he began to call for wise and valiant men to join him there in the war against the armies of eternity. In time, he would be joined there by the likes of Mortimer du Lac, Pellinore the hunter, Gawain the judge, and others. This marked the first generation of the Knights of the Stone Circle. These powerful workers of magic were trained by Arthur himself in ways of magic that he learned from the mated pair. As the situation in Europe grew more and more dire, they began to cross the Everest Channel to contribute to the war in any way they could. Some, like Mortimer, were from Europe initially. Others, like Gawain, had never set foot on the continent before. In point of fact, Sir Basil was born after the establishment of the Stone Circle, and was raised in the Arthurian tradition, the first person to be so raised and so squired, and sadly, one of the first to die in the Forever Wars. Whether it was because the Stone Circle was uniquely effective against the armies of eternity, or whether the Seventh Son had simply reached the zenith of his power and was beginning to go into decline, the armies of eternity began to suffer setbacks. And reasonably enough, they attributed this to the appearance of new powerful magical warriors coming from the north, beyond the Everest Channel. So the Seventh Son himself traveled to the north and confronted them. once again he would deal a grievous setback to Arthur and his people. 101 knights of the Stone Circle would be wiped out in a single battle, Gawain and Pellinore among them. And the seventh son would march his armies all the way up to the shores of the Channel, where they dug in and began to prepare for the crossing. By this point, Arthur had been fighting the armies of eternity for almost 30 years. He was passing his prime as a warrior, where the power and cunning of the seventh son did not seem dimmed at all. While Avalon had a great deal of time to grow and prosper under his leadership, with the damage done to the order by the seventh son, there were only 30 or so Knights of the Stone Circle left in the nation. Rather than spend them all in battle, Arthur chose to take one last gamble. When he rescued the Lady in Burning Stone, Arthur was granted a number of boons by the mated pair. Most of these he had already used, but one he viewed with great trepidation. The Lord in Raging Skies had promised to intervene in battle on his behalf once. Now, when his wife was abducted on the way to their marriage, the Lord became so enraged he doused every fire on earth. Knowing that the Lord was capable of such excesses, Arthur viewed this offer with a great deal of skepticism. What good would victory be if, in the winning of it, his nation and armies were swept away? Clearly, when his wrath was roused, the Lord was capable of such things. But when the seventh son raised his armies, put them on boats, and began to cross the Channel, Arthur decided that he would have to take the chance. And when this final boon was invoked, the surviving Knights of the Stone Circle watched as the storm reached down and struck Arthur's spear, carrying him away, and with him, the seventh son and all the armies of eternity. Storms lashed the Everest Channel and all of Europe for 40 days and 40 nights, and when they passed, no sign of the armies of eternity remained anywhere on the continent. Arthur himself was never seen again. But it is said that he watches over his people from every drop of rain and every bolt of lightning that falls from the sky, and if they ever stand in need of him again, he will return. Now, Arthur's destruction of the seventh son and the vanishing of the armies of eternity marks the end of the seventh son's reign and the beginning of the years after eternity. And while Avalon has faced many trials and struggles in the 875 years that have passed since, Arthur Phoenixborne has never been seen again. He continues to be regarded as Avalon's first and forever king. And it is his example set in both life and self-sacrifice that most people of Avaloni heritage seek to claim. How well do they succeed? Well, if you're curious about that, I would recommend giving the Roy Harper Chronicles a read. They're not quite available for purchase yet, but if you want to drop by my blog at natechenpublications.com, you can definitely read them there. Follow me on Twitter if you're interested in keeping up with my updates in a more condensed fashion. And of course, let me know what you think down in the comments below. There's a like button and a subscribe button down there. You can use those as you see fit, and I'll talk to you later.